Let's get into the 9th Arch Menu talk series that we've started a while ago. Before we're going to start, I would show my respect and acknowledge the Bedegal people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting, at least in Sydney, takes place, and to elders past and present. My name is Henk Häusler. I'm the ARC Center Director, and I'm joined here by the ARC Arch Menu crew in our office that can wave here. The man waving with the hat is Chris Bummerer, the postdoc fellow who just recently joined us. And we've got Zayed Modlib waving now as well, also a postdoc fellow from a CSE funded project. So today we've got Allister Lewis presenting. Allister Lewis is an architect, BIM manager, and the founder of Automated Data-Driven Design, ADDD.AO. Allister is a specialist in new construction technologies, softwares for architecture, engineering, construction. He's a passionate advocate for digital tools in the construction industry and the opportunities that this offers to be better, faster, and more profitable. Allister is working on the ADDD marketplace, which will be the central resource for AEC ConTech software in the future. The vision for this is to provide seamless access to all ConTech softwares through a digital marketplace. So Allister and I met a few months, nearly a year ago now. Because he reached out to me on the discussion, and we had a really, really fruitful discussion on what the future of AEC software could be. And we are looking forward to have Allister and ADDD joining Arch Menu in the near future when we're going to go through all the documents, because what he's doing is really, really remarkable. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut now and hand over to Allister. We're looking forward to see your talk.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to just share my screen and get that set up. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Okay. Fine. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll get going. I really appreciate being here. It's really great to speak to you all. So, yeah, as Hank says, we're going to look at ConTech and kind of explore a lot of things that I've been doing over the last year or so, I suppose, and then looking specifically at searching, assessing, and testing solutions, what that looks like, but also looking at the marketplace and things like that. So, let me just get this working. Yeah. So we're going to do quite a lot today. Hopefully, I'm going to go quite quickly. But if you've got any questions, then put them in the chat. I've got this up to the side here, so I should be able to see if anyone has any questions, or please interrupt and just ask me as I'm going through. But yeah, I'm going to do an introduction, a little bit about me and my background. I'm going to look at digital tools and ConTech in a more broader sense, and what that means for AEC professionals in the kind of current environment. And then we're going to look a little bit at developing a technology vision, which is something I've been doing in workshops with architects recently, and it's quite fun. And then go through some example kind of case studies of things that I've been working with architects on over the last 6 months, really. And then look a little bit about assessing software, what that looks like, and then touch on the ad marketplace at the end. So there's quite a lot to go through, and hopefully by the end we'll have a technology vision as an example from today. So yeah, as Hank says, I'm Allister Lewis. So I'm an architect and BIM manager, and I founded Automated Data-Driven Design. It was a little over 2 years ago, but I've been doing it full time for the last 8 months or so. And I've put myself as an expert in ConTech solutions. I should probably just say, you know, I'm more of an enthusiast in that. Yeah, it's something I've just got very, very engaged with over time, and find it quite fascinating how it's expanding at the moment. My route to this point has been kind of, I don't know if it's unusual. I think it's quite similar for lots of architects and technicians and people with different backgrounds who find themselves drawn more to the technology side of the industry. But I had a fairly normal career as an architect, designing buildings, community centres, public buildings and schools, and then transferred gradually during that time into being more of a BIM manager for a multidisciplinary local authority in the UK, where we were delivering lots of primary schools, primarily with Revit across all the different consultants. And then I joined an AJ100 practice as a head of technology, and that was a role which involved looking at everything to do with technology in practice. So it was you know, hardware, software, processes, research and development, training, It's a really great role because it's really broad, rather than just being essentially kind of in a what was a somewhat narrower field of just BIM manager. It was actually a role which allowed me to do a lot of different things. And then in my previous role at a company called Cope, which was formerly called MatterLab, which is a consultancy, I was doing kind of software product management, so taking clients' requirements and integrating software with other software, and we'll touch on that a little bit today, or implementing new solutions for them. So that was my kind of introduction to actually the software side of the industry. And Cope now is a ConTech software solution for offsite construction, and we'll have a look at that bit later on as well. And it shows that kind of their route from being initially a consultancy into being a full-time, 100%, a startup essentially. And now I'm the founder and a consultant at AD, and enjoying what I'm doing in there. It's been really interesting. So yeah, these are just examples of where I started. Normal architecture buildings of reasonable quality, I like to think, but yeah, community centres and schools and things, which I really loved. I loved being an architect and doing that role, but as I say, got more drawn to the technology side, 3D printing, laser cutters, Revit, coordination, collaboration, and really exploring what that looks like, and how teams work together, and the sort of technology side behind that, which is needed not only in terms of the software, but also the underlying infrastructure that allows that all to work. And the mission at AD, now that I've set this up, is to help construction professionals to be better, faster, and more profitable. And one of the key things I'm doing with architects is workshops to explore what their challenges are, which are really fun and interesting kind of day sessions. And then from that, looking at certain software that they might need, or looking at whether they want to develop their own software, looking at AI solutions or further training. It's a really broad and wide-ranging role, which I'm really enjoying kind of working with practices on, because all practices have in some ways the same challenges, but in other ways they have very different and disparate challenges as well. So it's quite a nice way of going into those practices and exploring how to kind of support them in that. And part of all of this, and we'll touch it later, is the database I have for construction software solutions. So on here it says 800, it's now 850, it keeps going up, and there's so many solutions coming out which can help niche areas in the market. It's fascinating really, but it's very hard to keep on top of. But part of my role is to kind of search, test, review, and kind of report back to practices and say, look, these are your solutions, this is what you can do with that. And then part of that is also looking at different things within practices. So looking at BIM, I've got a master's in BIM, and help practices do gap analysis for that to understand where they need to improve. AI, I've got a partner organisation I'm working with on a couple of projects, which are really, really fascinating. I do market research as well. So I'm working with a ConTech company at the moment to essentially position themselves in the market and enable them to gain funding from a venture capitalist firm. And then looking at other parts of the software production process, so wireframing, minimum viable product, software development and automation, and importantly support, because it's great to have all these solutions, but actually getting them implemented and in use is a huge task in itself. So I really like this quote from William Gibson, because I think it shows where we are at the moment, and that the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed, and we know the construction industry is hugely fragmented. There's loads of challenges, and some people are racing ahead of into the future with AI and doing all these amazing things with those tools, and there are other practices who are still using AutoCAD, 2D delivery, and very kind of traditional workflows. And there's a huge spectrum in between all of those, which is just, I think, is where we are. And this is where I was when I first started. My first practice, we were using CAD, Vectorworks. We had Adobe Suite for graphics, and we had desktop publishing, and that was pretty much it. And then, if you fast forward to now, this is just an ecosystem of BIM solutions out there, and the BIM timeline of different organizations buying up different products to do with BIM authoring tools. So there's another kind of side window to all of this, which is all the construction technology solutions out there. And I don't doubt that some of these big players in here, like Bentley, Hexagon, Autodesk, Trimble, will start buying up those smaller companies over time as they see them being successful. And what's happening is that in construction technology is that it's growing really fast. So you can see here, between 2020 and 2022, there was 85% growth in this. And over the last year, 2 years, you can see that AI and AI-based solutions and chatbots and co-pilots being integrated into solutions are starting to fuel that as well, because they're starting to essentially sound more exciting, maybe. And I think AI is kind of, a lot of companies say they're doing AI when they're not actually doing AI, but there's a lot of technology which is using it, and it's actually moving things forward really quickly. And I think there is a lot of opportunity out there for people who have ideas for solutions, however niche they may be, to create those and create a product quite quickly and easily. And then in terms of for professionals, what this looks like, is quite challenging, because on the one hand, you've got the software market's due to double to about £13 billion worth by 2030, which is great. But it also means all those practices which are having to pay for all this software, there's looking like a very big increase in costs for software over time. And how does architects manage that? And I think that is not necessarily an answer I have at the moment, but it will be something that comes up, because most companies have software as a service models, which means that you're paying monthly. But then what happens if you're paying monthly for 10 pieces of software across an office where it's pay per user? The order of costs go up very, very quickly. And that's going to be a big challenge moving forward, is how, from the one hand, ConTech companies position themselves and say, actually, we are affordable and we're worth the investment. But also architecture practices saying, we can afford this, or no, we can't afford this, and therefore we'll continue in a manual way, for example, because it's not necessarily affordable. As I've said previously, we've got this database. It's 850 different software solutions in there. There's over 50 categories. I'm adding to it on a weekly basis, and this forms the kind of the bedrock of a lot of the work that I'm doing. Is when we do workshops, go, let's have a look at these solutions. Where are your challenges? Let's have a look at this database and start to find them. Because what I realized was that I was seeing all these solutions and I kept recording them, but there isn't a central location for this that people can find quickly and easily. There are web directories and there are lists and there are LinkedIn lists of stuff which people like, but there's not a lot of action out of it. And that's where the marketplace was going to position itself. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But this database is, it's growing, and it's hugely exciting in a lot of ways. So in terms of professionals, what does it mean, all of this stuff? So we know that professionals typically want to focus on their role and their day-to-day job. They don't necessarily want to be doing researching software or managing data in a way, but they are wanting to be really more efficient and quick at what they do, and crucially want to automate the mundane work. And I think this is a big issue for architects, is that we do a lot of mundane kind of prosaic work where we're just doing the same thing over and over again, and we want to try and get rid of that. And crucially, all the architects, BIM managers, and the companies that I speak to, they're struggling to find the right solutions because they don't have time. They've got so much to do in their day jobs that finding time to find solutions is really difficult. So that kind of time and resource is where I'm kind of saying I can support them with. And then with ConTech companies, they want to connect with those professionals, but again, they're so busy, they don't have time to answer all these emails saying, do you want to see our latest products? But they are actually genuinely out there to try and help professionals to be more efficient in what they do. And they have got the technology to help solve some of their problems, whether that's a bespoke solution or whether it's a proprietary solution that they've developed themselves. And as I say, it's really hard for them to be discovered because there is no central location for this software really. So that's where the marketplace is going to be, that central location. I'm sure of it. That will allow people to find these quickly and easily. And then crucially behind all of this, it's time consuming to implement these solutions. So I know from my own experience that getting into a practice, getting new solution, training the people in that, having champions, getting it embedded on projects is a massive challenge. And a lot of money is essentially spent where people get the solution, but then they don't actually end up using it, or only a couple of people use it. So this is where I kind of see myself sitting at the moment, is a kind of a connector between these two sides. So I do work with a lot of ConTech companies, which is fascinating to see them grow and how they want to develop, and then AEC professionals as well, working with them to work out the best solutions for them. And part of that kind of process I've kind of summarized into, searching for solutions, reviewing those and having a criteria for that, reporting back to them, and having a kind of criteria to say, look, this is what we're looking for, what you're looking for in there, and then integrating and implementing later on. So this is a sort of kind of an overview. And I would say the first step typically starts with a workshop session where we go through all of the opportunities out there for them and the challenges they experience. And it is a really fascinating session because the stuff that comes out is really interesting. And I don't know how often practices do a sort of tech stack review or just sit and talk about actually what are the challenges we're having, where are we not efficient, what could help us with that. So I wanted to do something which I've done in a workshop recently. So if you've got a phone, you can scan this QR code, or I will put the code back in the chat again for those who may have joined a bit later. So there should be a link there. If you go there, what you'll see is a question which is about how developing a technology vision. So did this with the practice, and it was really interesting. We actually got really good alignment across all of the people in that session, and we had kind of IT managers, BIM people, computational design, and architects, and newly qualified architects and junior members of the team. So I'm going to just, this QR code will be up here for a minute, but if you can answer the question in there, that'd be great. So we're trying to develop a vision statement, and the question is about, let me just double check what the question is. What's your vision for technology and software at your organization, or for you more generally? Because I think this is something that as architects, we probably haven't been good at doing. We always talk about our design philosophy and our design vision and what we're trying to achieve with our clients and our sustainability, lots of investment in that. But in terms of technology, I feel that a lot of architects could do a lot better and say, actually, what do we want our technology to do for us? How do we want it to work? What are we trying to achieve with it? How does it support our wider design visions? So I'm just going to split my scene just to make sure that that is working and everyone can access that. Great. Okay. So yeah, if you're happy to add some comments in there, that would be really great, and we'll collate those at the end and try and put something together which maybe represents us as a group and what we're trying to achieve. This is an example of the one that I did previously, and this is a summation of that, which is to possess a framework of integrated tools that empowers excellence in design, innovation, visualization, analysis, and efficient delivery on all our projects. And this encapsulated that team's kind of requirements. And you can see, design is forefront here. It's actually, this is what we want it to do, support great design, because as architects, we really want to be creating great designs. That's what we want. And that comes with, having the right visualization tools to communicate the ideas, the right analysis tools to make sure we are sustainable and working in a sustainable manner. And then, efficient delivery comes up time and again. We are slow at what we do and we need to be better and faster. So that kind of chimed really neatly for them and as an organization. Okay, so part of the work that I've been doing is looking at kind of what I've called like a software framework. So we're kind of trying to position all these the software solutions out there and say, actually, what are the key categories for that? And part of that is looking at some key areas, and you can see these here. And what I actually need to do is actually add on stage 6 and 7, which is in use and handover, onto this diagram, because it should go into that next stage actually, where it's like, what happens in use? Do you do post-occupancy evaluation? How is the building performing? There's lots of tools for in use, which obviously needs to be added in here for asset management and things. But this gives a good place to start, particularly for architects, and that's my background. So that's where I tend to start in terms of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to capture. And what this allows us to do is say, okay, here are all the tools out there. What tools are you using at the moment? And start to fill in that in and say, okay, look, we can see we're doing really well in sustainability and modeling, but there are some gaps which are identified here. It also allows you to kind of see the ecosystem of tools that they use and say, actually, have we got crossovers? Have we got overlaps? Does this software speak to each other neatly and easily? And that's part of the kind of the big problem with the software, is actually getting those software to work neatly together. And that what this is doing then is saying, okay, these are the gaps. Let's look at those and start to create a roadmap for implementation with those software based on their sort of priorities, linking back to that vision as well, and saying, okay, you're trying to achieve these things. one, let's look at automation. What can we automate in terms of your workflows, whether it's using Dynamo or Grasshopper scripts, or whether actually developing their own tool or using something proprietary, which connects software like Beam, Rhino to Revit, Rhino inside Revit, things like that. So, and then obviously having a roadmap which says, okay, so priority item 2 will be more about your modeling tools. Usually it's trying to get people to stop using SketchUp because it's so inefficient in a workflow, and try and find other tools for them to use. But it could be anything for different organizations. And then from that, you can put together a roadmap and actually say, okay, what are the quick wins? Stage 4 efficiencies was highlighted at a previous one. And that was, to be honest, most architects say that it takes so long to produce information. They are really keen on trying to save money, save time on that. So, creating a knowledge base and automating drawing production is a key area. And then looking at workflows, linking from early stage into stage 3 and 4, or report writing. How can we automate the mundane? And I think that's really crucial, particularly around AI. AI is used a lot to kind of talk about the exciting design-focused stuff, but I think AI can automate a lot of mundane stuff for us, particularly reports, minutes, emails. I think that, which is unfortunately extremely time-consuming and a lot of what architects tend to do. So you can see here, it just gives you a kind of a practice, a roadmap of where they might want to go, and they can set that up into a sort of a program of works where they allocate people to that to kind of develop that further. Or it might be that I look at different solutions. So you can see here for optimization, looking at generative design solutions, which ones might be most appropriate for them. So you can review those. Sustainability and low carbon calculators, artificial intelligence based software, and what the options are out there at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really nice. It's a really good way to talk to practices and give them a kind of concrete way to move forward. I'm going to just pause there. Has anyone got any questions at all for me? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Farouk, you got a question?
Yes, Alistair, the presentation is awesome, by the way. I was wondering, just on that last slide, so you take a look at all the software stack in the company and recommend it to them. Do you also look at their hardware stack? Because sometimes I realize to run the software and all the tools, there's a limitation on the compute that a firm has, or they're looking for options, and the cost for the hardware is so high, then they start to back off. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, no, I mean that's crucial. You're absolutely right. So it depends on the practice. So larger practices tend to have an IT manager, maybe a BIM manager, and they work together, and they've got the capacity to plan out and make sure they've got the right infrastructure for that and the hardware. For more medium-sized practices, and particularly small ones, they don't have that. It's usually outsourced, and it's usually just support-based IT support. So they don't tend to have that. So that is part of what I do. And I'm going to just skip to, yeah, here we are. This is a really good question. So I have done technology kind of holistic strategies. So that looks at the hardware that they have and what that needs to be improved, software, infrastructure, and things like just how good is their internet line, how many gigabits can they get for it, and things, and that IT support. Look at processes which typically focus around kind of getting BIM implemented and how they work through their day-to-day workflows on that. Training, research and development, and having costs in there as well. So this is something I did at a previous practice, and we basically set out a 3-year strategy based on this, had the recommendations, then had a timeline, said, okay, what we're going to do. And for that particular practice, they wanted to move from Apple computers to PCs, and we used a virtual desktop interface infrastructure, to link between the two on that project. So they did a transition gradually from Vectorworks to Revit, and having a virtual desktop allowed them a very low cost way of testing it out, using it, getting people on it, trained up, and then before they went for the big investment of the hardware. But going back to your original question, one of the key problems that artificial intelligence-based software will have is the amount of graphics card use that is required, processing use as well. So it will mean that the hardware has to be improved, and there's a cost to that, and it needs to be allocated in as well. So yeah, the answer is yes, and this is an example of that. So I did a virtual desktop, what do I call it, like a review of the options out there for an architect, because they were considering something similar. They're all on ArchiCAD, and they want to explore moving to Revit. They're not totally sure, so I did a review of all of the different VDI solutions out there, different ways of doing that, whether it's on-premise, off-premise, cloud hosted, things like that as well, because there's quite a few different options out there. And CloudLies, I'm going to plug a little bit here, but CloudLies have got desktops which you can rent per hour, basically, but they've got super high GPU ones if you need it. So if you are running an AI based solution, and if you're using Omniverse, you can run it through their cloud-based desktops. And I've used it previously. It's very good, I think. So maybe worth exploring. I am plugging them a bit because they're on the marketplace, but there are other options that are available. But yeah, so hardware underscores all of this, and that's part of what I do if that's needed for particular clients. Also do gap analysis. So we've done gap analysis in terms of skills. So what we tend to do is I've got a questionnaire for architects to find out what skills they have, because a lot of practices may not know that their employees have skills in some of this AI software, or in different solutions out there which they could leverage in terms of their workflows, whether it's coding or whether it's a specific bespoke piece of generative design or something. So do kind of gap analysis for that. Also for BIM, I did a gap analysis last week for a practice. It was a 50-page report for their kind of their BIM requirements, essentially, that needed to be updated. And they're a practice which are in a fairly traditional mode where they're doing everything in AutoCAD, but now they've won a project in a BIM, not BIM, no, an ISO 19650 BIM framework project. They need to upskill very, very quickly. So we're in the process of doing that at the moment. So that's another way of looking at this process. And the outcome of this is to try and make sure that things are easy to identify and use. Okay, that video is not working, I'm afraid. But we've done that sort of skills assessment for people, and it is really interesting seeing what they come out with. Another project we did, this was a year and a half ago or so, where for a housing association client, we looked at generative design software for them. This is while I was at COPE, and we looked at the different software out there. So Archistar, I think, is an Australian company, but Schema and SpaceMaker, which is now Forma, but Autodesk has bought it out, and SiteSolve. And I tested all of this software together and created a report and said, look, based against your requirements, these are the outcomes, using Power BI to illustrate that in a much more kind of visually engaging way. And then getting the preferred software, which was SiteSolve, implementing that with the client, setting up templates for them, which is really good. We used SiteSolve because it had a lot of kind of UK granular detail you could add into it based around UK standards. And yeah, it's a really good piece of software. And then the next stage for that client was to say, okay, ViewCity actually owned SiteSolve, so we did a project where ViewCity, which does kind of planning data, planning information and site information to do with massing. You can identify your site, then you could integrate that with SiteSolve to do a generative design to create a massing exercise like the diagram on the left. And then from there, we created a plugin which would then take it into Revit and create all of that massing with the standard unit types that the housing association had for 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed apartments. So this basically allowed you to identify a site, create massing, and then create a super detailed Revit model in maybe about 20 minutes or so, whereas usually that would take weeks, most likely, for architects. So this is one example of what you can achieve with some of the software out there by linking them together with the right people. And then we reviewed that software, or I reviewed software in phase 1. And then for phase 2, we actually asked 5 sets of architects to assess the software as well. And we could see where we were aligned and where actually there were some mismatches in what I thought was really good and what they thought were really good. We're not far off, but it's a useful exercise to kind of get feedback from actual users to say, look, this was great, but in this example, they didn't think car parking tool was particularly useful in the iteration they tested. And from this, what I've done is I've created a kind of review criteria and touch on this a little bit later, again, in a bit more detail. But the idea was, how do we test software? We need to have a much more standardized way of doing that. And we need to have a way of kind of weighting that scoring and make it applicable to the client. So we developed a kind of review criteria for that, which has then kind of grown and developed. And I'll show you that in a second. But the idea behind this was to have a weighted scoring so that if a particular client has a requirement around MMC, modern methods of construction, for example, they can up that scoring against something else like, which may not be quite as important, like the data framework that it sits on things. So this gives users the granularity to move things up and down as they want to, and the software can then be assessed in a consistent manner, which is what we're trying to achieve with this. There is some really interesting projects with AI that we're doing, and interestingly, they aren't really like super flashy kind of we're rendering with AI-based tools or doing prompt management and stuff like that. This is actually saying, let's take something really mundane that takes us ages and make it a lot faster. So we've done a proposal for a UK-based architect who do over 100 proposals a year, and they have 2 people full-time working on this, and basically what they want to try and do is reduce that expenditure down and use their database of all of the proposals they've done previously to say, can we use that and create a large language model out of all of that data so that we can use it to inform bids in the future? And what they wanted to do was have a fee benchmarking spreadsheet, so take all of their fees from the last 20 years or so and have the ability to go, we've got a new project, is it worth bidding for this in terms of time and money? And that gives them a fee benchmark for that, based around things like where it's based in the world, what type of project it is, the contract value, how many people need to be on that, things like that. So we can do that step 1. Then step 2, they can do a fee proposal letter. So again, taking all of their previous fee proposal letters and use that to inform them writing a new one and say, we're going to do the architecture, interior and landscape. And it would obviously, be able to use that previous data to inform that letter production. And then crucially for them was a bid narrative. They have a very individual style and tone of voice and the way that they talk about their projects. And they would then create this bid narrative where we're going to be doing that section by section. So they do section 1, write me the introduction for this project. And then once that's done, move to section 2, 3 and 4 and so on. So have a lot of control over the granularity of that response and allow them to edit and update that and refine it as they go through. So what they're trying to achieve and what we've talked about is say, look, we're trying to reduce your number of hours by 70% that you spend on these. And it is automating the mundane, but they spend a lot of time and effort and money on this, and pretty much every architect will be. If we can make that quick and easy, that seems like a really good opportunity for AI to be used in this way. So we mocked up a very kind of quick sort of overview of what the interface might look like. It's just based on ChatGPT. We're going to do something different for them particularly, but it was just a way of illustrating to them. You upload the documents, you then start asking questions, and then start to produce this documentation for you. Okay, does anyone have any questions on that? Again, I don't want to just keep steamrolling if people have got any questions. Okay, Farouk again, hi.
Hi, Alistair. Sorry, I'm there again.
No, keep going.
On that AI model, are you using the Llama models to train them, or how are you developing the in-house one?
Yes, so the actual large language model we're using, I don't think it's Llama. That's the Facebook one, I think.
Yeah, the Meta one that came out just recently.
Yeah, so I think as I'm working with an AI partner, I know roughly what it is, but I don't want to get it wrong. But we are using a specific AI model for it, and that's going to form the basis for the kind of the software architecture that's built on top of it. So the answer is we are using that. Yeah, we're not kind of developing our own, AI, because that'd be impossibly expensive. But we're going to sit on top of another one, and the tool will be based on that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so this next section is more about talking about kind of the bigger picture in terms of what I'm trying to achieve. So it's fine doing consultancy work, but it means that there's a limit in terms of my time of what I can support. And actually what I wanted to try and do is actually make sure this is much more accessible to people. So that database is accessible to people, the ability to search, test, review, and report on software is a lot more accessible for people. And what we kind of realized out there is you've got these large companies which are smothering in a way. So you've got Autodesk, Trimble, Hexagon. They are the very large incumbents, and they make it very difficult for architects and engineers to find other solutions because you're so locked in terms of investment in time, resource, training, and crucially money to these providers. But we do know that construction needs better solutions, and there are better solutions emerging all the time out there. And these newcomers are kind of small and nimble ConTech companies, and they are challenging that status quo. And what we're trying to say is, look, we really want to try and find these much quicker and easier for these large companies, and either integrate them into that kind of that tech stack that's already there, or it is possible that they might replace some of those aspects of those larger companies, which we know that the largest software solutions like ArchiCAD, AutoCAD, Revit, even Vectorworks, they're all quite old pieces of software now. They've obviously gone through some level of iteration and development, but there is a lot more work to be done on them, and crucially isn't being done on them to suit users' needs. So these new solutions are emerging and can form part of a new kind of ecosystem of software. And behind all of this is kind of the wider industry frustrations with companies like Autodesk, where Revit, essentially, I started using it in 2008. And if you'd given me a 2024 version of Revit, I would still be able to use it because it is so similar and has developed very minutely over time. But in terms of the order of cost for that, it's obviously gone up and up and up year on year. And the open letter which came from architects in Europe and Scandinavia and in America basically was saying we want things to improve. And crucially, it was about imagining the future tools that we need to shape the world around us. To actually, we want these to be better. And from this, the future AEC software specification was created. So if you aren't aware of that, obviously Andy's on the call and was crucial behind all of that, but have a look at it. It's a really amazing initiative. And it's the basis for what I'm seeing myself moving forward for, is actually using this to say, actually, how do we use this for reviewing software in a consistent manner? How can we make that more accessible for lots of people to do that? So the idea is that for software users, they can benefit from that software specification in terms of what they're looking for, but also it helps ConTech companies to look at themselves and say, actually, against this criteria, are we meeting some of these requirements? It doesn't have to be all of them, but within their specific field of development, are they making sure it is accessible, that the user experience is really good, they are responding to sustainability requirements or offsite and things. So it works for both sides of the coin, which is really good. And from this, we talked about database. We can use that database to start populating a marketplace for construction technology solutions. So rather than being essentially private to me or the people who employ me to do consultancy, it can be much more accessible. And the idea is to be able to kind of benchmark solutions so that if you have 3 solutions in the same area or field, you can use that assessment criteria to benchmark a lot more consistently. So vendors can benchmark themselves, which I think would be quite useful and open, but users can actually use that to benchmark for their requirements internally and be able to assess between different software. So I've got to do a clash detection and issue management software review for 4 different solutions. I'm going to use this framework to do that, and obviously that will allow them to be able to see where they will work together. And where where there could be improvements and which one is going to suit their requirements equally. So the big picture is that what I've done is, in order to make that search section of this much more accessible, is I've created what I've called the ad marketplace. I'm laughing because people are questioning whether ad is the right word to use, but I'm kind of leaning into it because people are saying it's a bit too close to ADHD. But I think I'm leaning into it. I think it's it is where it is at the moment. But maybe a rebranding could be on the cards at some point. But I've called it the ad marketplace, and the idea is that all of that software, rather than being in a database, will be on a platform, and that platform is true to the sense that Amazon is a platform, Airbnb is a platform, Uber is a platform. They're all platforms that provide you access to something. They don't necessarily have all of that. Like Airbnb doesn't own properties; they just allow access to those properties, so you can find them quickly and easily, book them, and start using them. So the website has been live since February. We've got 50 categories on there, and we have got over, we had 80 products on there as of last month, but we've definitely had another 10 go on in the last few weeks. So we're getting close to 100. And they are from a really diverse range of different software. So you can see on the screen at the bottom the different logos. We've got companies like Simterra, which is an app to improve communications on site. Rayon is a 2D online planning and 2D drawing app, basically. You've got companies like Beam, which is Rhino into Revit, Spatio, which is generative design. We've got New Forma on there, which is what I call an enterprise resource planner for architects. It's a huge range of products that are going on there. And part of my day-to-day job is every day I have a meeting with 2 or 3 companies to talk about their software and say, would you want to be on the marketplace? And typically, most of them say yes, which is really amazing. So I think there is a need for this. The ConTech companies themselves are saying, this is great, people can find us, we want to work with you, we want people to find us quickly and easily. So that's really encouraging. So that platform is there, and essentially it's free to go on there. People can put their software on there, create a store, put products on there. And what they can do is they can either link to their website through it. So essentially, that's all free to do all of that. I have got affiliate link programs with some companies which have that, so that essentially if people got referred from here, I could get payment, which helps sustain the website. But also you can sell your software through here. So this applies particularly for small and medium-sized companies who are, keen to gain a foothold in the market. They don't have a payment system which is set up already. If they want to do it software as a service, they can set this up through this marketplace quickly and easily. It literally takes 10 or 15 minutes to set it all up, and then they can start selling software through here. And that's the point where I can get a percentage of that's selling from that software. So it's the same as any e-commerce marketplace like Amazon, etc. It just happens to be that it's for construction technology software. What I have been doing more recently is putting services on here as well. So there are companies who do computational design like Remap, which you can see on the left here. They do computational design and Revit app development. The services are going on here as well. So there's BIM management, computational design, workshops, those services are going on here as well, because a lot of companies, whether they're producing ConTech solely or not, have got consultancy services as well. So it works hand in hand with them. So yeah, so there's some of the products out there. And then, the key is for users, they can search for software quickly and easily, and that will then allow them to find the solutions really seamlessly in one environment. That's meant to be a video and it's not working, which I'm sorry about. And then for construction technology companies, it's making sure that they can connect with their users really quickly and easily as well. And I do a lot of outreach with companies to say, let's do blogs, let's do videos, let's do kind of webinars. And that's kind of the program going forward, is about talking about all this software out there, making it accessible to as many people as possible. The next step with this is that we wanted to make it really easy for people to test software. So a lot of companies I spoke to said, we want to test software, but we can't because our IT system won't let us. And my best example for this is a friend of mine. She works in a local authority. She said, I just wanted to test a piece of software and it took a year to get it installed just to test it. And I've spoken to a lot of companies, and that's very common. It may not take a year, but it takes months to get someone to test that software, make sure it's safe and it's okay to just test it, then implement it, test it, and then, you know, by that point the opportunity is lost, project's moved on, other software's around, whatever it may be. So what I've created is a virtual desktop interface or infrastructure as a sandpit environment. So when you want to access software, you can go into that environment, load up the software quickly and easily, test it, use the review criteria, use the report structure as well that we've put together for this, and get something in front of someone, you know, much quicker. So this, what I've done is there's a link on the website where you could basically go in and say, I want to buy, you know, a VDI desktop for an hour, 2 hours, maybe half day, whatever it may be, and that can be arranged, and they can test it quickly and easily. And it's about facilitating that process so that they can get to the software quickly and easily. And equally then, this is where the review criteria comes in, using the future AEC software specification, using that to consistently review software, use that scoring approach to bring rigor to that process. And you can see here, there's a lot of data in here. It's probably a bit too much, but we're going to set up a focus group to look at this and say, actually, how can we actually use this and make it accessible to as many people as possible? So if anyone wants to be part of a focus group on that, then please reach out and let me know after today. But it follows that process where, you know, software vendors can use it to review themselves, but crucially, software users can use this as a good place to start, because we don't have a consistent software assessment process for software at the moment in construction. It's kind of a bit mad. I think everyone's probably developing their own one, they have their own way of doing things, but this is trying to make it much more equitable and accessible for everyone. And then what you can see here is, you know, try to put some kind of limitations, and we weren't trying to say to people everything has to reach 100%. We just want to make sure it's relevant, consistent, and comparable against that category. So, you know, for certain pieces of software like a connector, it may be that they score, you know, 50% and 55% for another one. That's not necessarily bad. It just gives you a way of actually benchmarking the two against each other. But what we're trying to do is, you know, talk to the industry and say, actually, how can we use this in a sensible way, which essentially doesn't scare anyone by thinking that they, you know, haven't reached 100% or they're trying to do everything, just trying to make it, you know, really accessible. And we're developing that at the moment. And then following on from that, I've got a software report structure. It's very basic, but essentially allows users to go, I've done a review, pre-configure some of this, you know, we'd use AI to fill in some of this report section quickly and easily, I think, transport in some of the basic data about software, which is going to be the same, but then users can put in their review process and then also put in their kind of qualitative analysis as well. So we've got quantitative kind of assessment, but have some qualitative words in there as well to allow users to say, this was quite good, I struggled with this, or it worked on this project really well. So yeah, it kind of works in that way. And the idea is that we get solutions in front of decision makers faster. So when there is a problem identified, usually by teams, they can search, test, review, and report on something and get it in front of, you know, a director, an IT manager, the procurement manager, or you know, whoever is essentially paying for software in that organization, and say, look, we've done this diligence, look at this report, we really need this solution, can we move ahead? And that's trying to compress that whole, you know, challenge identification to implementation a lot faster. So I don't know if this really is going to work. Yes, it is. Fantastic. So this is just an illustration of that. So you go to the marketplace, you look for a piece of software. So in this case, Hectile, which is a parametric design solution. You go here and you can see there's the software, but also an opportunity to test in a VDI. And what I've created is a link to a VDI environment, which I've got logged into, so it's worked straight away. You can then launch that. This is all through Cloudalize, so I'm doing them lots of advertising here, but it does work really well. I've used it before. And then in this example, we created a really quick building, tested out the software, looking at the kind of environment we created, and then from there, we can get the review criteria up and start to go through that and say, okay, how does it work with exporting? What options are there? How does it work with massing? Does it relate to MMC at all? what's the data security of it, go through these questions and start scoring it quickly and easily using the framework here. And then when you get to the bottom, you can see actually these are all the group criteria. You could change those based on requirements, and it would give you those overall scores. And then you get a summary of those together, which is really useful. And then from here, I've created a report which embeds this very simple spreadsheet into a report, and that can then start to be updated based on the software. So in an ideal world, it would all be super automated, use AI and things, but this is essentially a minimum viable product. It works. People could download this quickly and easily and start using it, and it would just give them a really good place to start. So this is it's in development and will be made available probably in the next quarter, I think I'm going to say. Or if you want to see it sooner than that, please reach out and I can send you a copy, and you can have a look. But basically, it's just showing download it, make a PDF out of it, and very quickly you've got something which looks hopefully quite convincing and allows you to get that in front of someone who can then make a decision on that software. Okay, I'm nearly up to an hour, so I'm going to stop soon. But has anyone got any questions at all on that? I'll pause there for a second. Okay, I'll keep going. Right, so then the next step before this was actually looking at tech stacks, and this is kind of just thinking about where do we go from here. Let's say the marketplace is super successful, people can find software quickly and easily, they can test it, they do all this stuff, which is really great. The next step logically, and this is something that Hank and I talked about when we first met very early doors, was actually talking about tech stacks. How do these solutions fit in together in tech stacks? Could we create like a certified ecosystem? What would the integrations be between those software? What can be automated? What does the future look like with this? And I think there's some really interesting opportunities here where you could unlock a lot of potential between those software and automate some of our workflows. So I've just done some examples with this. So we talked already about ViewCity as a planning software, SiteSolve as generative design, Preoptima allow you to analyze carbon and embody carbon in a proposal. So you can do a really early stage iterative design work there. Then maybe you get that into Rhino and you start to design a facade around that, what that actually looks like. Really interesting one, which is responding to the microclimate, the sun patterns and things like that. And then using software like Speckle, which is an amazing connector software, which is now connecting between so many different bits of software. It's really amazing. But in this example, you can go from Rhino to ArchiCAD quickly and easily. You don't need to export to IFC or FBX or any of that sort of stuff. You just connect via Speckle's web application. Use ArchiCAD as your BIM authoring software, so you create your detailed design information, your construction information in there. And then what you can do is export that as an IFC. Cope, which is offsite construction piece of software, which is where I used to work last year. Their software works on IFC. It will take an IFC model, and if you have products you want to apply to that model, so let's say precast planks, plasterboard, structurally insulated panels, whatever it may be, you can apply those products to the IFC model, and it will then generate all of your offsite construction information ready to go to a factory. They can they can produce all the panels or cut all the panels, then it's transported to site and built. So it's compressing again that whole design process. So that's one kind of option. Or you could say, look, we use Spatio to do a load of generative design research up front, and maybe then use Rayon as a 2D planning tool once you get it into you've got your plans ready. Rayon is a really beautifully designed app, and actually Spatio is as well. They're really very nice in terms of their graphical interface, which I think architects would really enjoy. And then so you've got your kind of early stage design work done there. One-click LCA is a low carbon calculator again to check out your sustainability. You might then take that into Snaptrude, which again is a very kind of more free-form modeling tool, which would then has an integrator straight into Revit. So it's completely integrated in there. You can then use Revit for your automation, your BIM authoring tool, and then potentially use something like Swap, which will then produce all of the drawings and all the construction information using AI from that tool. And then maybe you'd export it to Facet Homes, who are an off-site manufacturer of houses. They would produce all the information and build the building. And then Satori is a really amazing piece of software. I say this about all software, but Satori, I think, is genuinely a really amazing piece of software across the life cycle. But what they can do is they can manage data for projects and design standards for projects from the outset. So if you have a project where you've got loads of design requirements from a big client which has multiple offices across the world, for example, you can manage their design standards with this. Room data sheets you can manage with this as well. I think it's really, really powerful. But also once the building is built and finished, you can use it as an asset management tool as well to monitor how the building's being used. Yeah, the client has that as a 3D representation of their project. It's kind of moving towards digital twins in a way. So these are sort of, it's two examples. I could go on all day, unfortunately, with different tech stacks. It depends on the different clients. But the idea behind this is we use that future AEC software specification to be better, faster, more profitable, more sustainable, whatever the priority is there. You can look at those workflows. The solution discovery process is much more improved, and there's much more consistency in the assessment. So in terms of that technology vision, I'm just going to grab what we've got in here and try and create something very quickly. We've got 4 responses in here. Give me 2 minutes while I just use ChatGPT to create this for me. Okay. So, I mean, this is super basic. I'm just messing around with ChatGPT really, but it's a really useful tool that a lot of architects use, to do some of the automation of this sort of mundane stuff. Okay, right. Okay, it's gone quite long. I'm just going to compress it a bit. It's gone on a bit long. Okay, what we've written here is, our vision is to revolutionize architectural manufacturing with automation and image software. By reducing material use and emissions, we aim for sustainable and efficient building. Technology will serve as a key collaborator, handling groundwork, empowering informed decisions, and enhancing creative design time, which I think is quite nice. Let me see if I just put that in here for a minute so you can see it. So, I mean, it's a very simple exercise, but it's an opportunity to kind of just think about actually what do we want our technology to do, and I think this is, yeah, it's a good place to start for many practices, I think. Okay, let's just make that bigger. Yeah, can you still see that? Am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah. So obviously this would need more refinement, but let's pick out some of those key things that maybe that would put into the sort of the feedback. And yeah, revolutionize architectural manufacturing. I mean, there's obviously a key. Someone's obviously thinking very clearly about actually how do we produce the actual buildings themselves, with automation and innovative software. Reducing material use, we know about how wasteful the industry is. So products like Cope are very much looking at trying to do that, aren't they? Essentially by reducing waste, by having everything pre-cut off-site and then brought to site. Sustainable and efficient building. I think the other thing is technology will serve as a key collaborator. What we're talking about here is that we don't want technology driving designs. And there was a term a little while ago, people were talking about how buildings look like a Revit building. And that there is a problem with Revit, is that sometimes it won't do what you want it to do, and it stymies your sort of design. And that's what we want, is actually technology to be a collaborator and actually help us to produce great work rather than being constrained by it. So yeah, hopefully that's useful. If I could, yeah. So just looking at hedges quickly, we're going to grow the marketplace. Like I say, I want to get up to 100 products as soon as possible on there, and I'm pretty sure we're going to hit that pretty quickly given the number of conversations I'm having about this. But then it'll be about maintaining growth and getting users to go there and find the software quickly and easily. But equally listening to feedback and saying that this is a first iteration, where could we improve, what would be best to make this better. And I've had some feedback on how you search for software, and equally just trying to make sure that the categories are accurate, and that the reviews on software are also quite easy to understand on there. And then the VDI, I mean, essentially is ready now. So I've got a potential client who said, because I said to them I can give you a VDI, and they're like, oh, right, amazing. So we could just test on there. I'm like, yeah, and then that would be quick and easy for them. So I need to just get back to them on it. But the idea is that if they wanted to use my that sandpit to test software quickly and easily. And then, as I said, forming a focus groups for the assessment criteria. So this is something I'm going to set up from September onwards. If you'd like to be involved, please let me know. It'd be great to have your input into this, basically, to kind of to drive that assessment criteria and make it better, because it's a first iteration right now. So if you are a vendor, if you know software companies and you think there'd be a good shout on here, reach out to me. I will contact them or tell them about it, and get them to get in touch with me. If you are an AC professional, then obviously start to visit it, search it, give me feedback, give me categories you may want to see that they can always be added to. And then focus group for the review criteria, and use this for the test environment as well is perfectly possible. So come back to me, and we'd love to work with you all. So that's basically it. So got the marketplace, go and have a look at it, explore the future AEC software specification. Get in touch if you'd like a workshop as well. We've been doing that with lots of architects, whether online or in person. Either can be organized depending where you are in the world, but it'd be really great to do those sessions with you. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time, really appreciate it. There is a feedback form here if you'd like to give me a little bit of feedback, that would be great. But I'll stop talking if there are any questions.
There's one. Baruch, go for it.
Yes, thank you, Allister. Sorry, it's how do we get access to the database? Is it free or is it a paid one?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. So I've really struggled to work out how to do it, but the aim is basically I can allow access to that, but it will be a paid thing.
Of course.
So what I will be doing is I'll be releasing kind of subsections of it. So, and if you go to the website, to the marketplace now, for generative design, there is one where you've got the top 10 lists of generative design software and also low carbon calculators, which you can download for free. But then if you want to buy the whole of that category, there is, I think I said it at £99, I think, to buy all of that category. But I am exploring how to essentially allow access to it, but also essentially monetize it a little bit to help pay for the day-to-day. And there is a new offering I'm going to start doing, which I've got drafted next to you, which is what I'm looking at, which is kind of like, here's a free kind of set of information, which will have a lot of what we'll talk about today. So a set of software and the review criteria template and the report template as well. But then there'll be a sort of a slightly better version, which will be a paid for thing, which has got more that you can have from it, and then there's a next step up as well, which will be more of a consultancy based workshop. Let's work together, go through the database together, and allow full access to that. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and just another one, just a small little one. Thank you for introducing us to cloud, that VDI environment that you were using. I was trying to create something similar in Azure with NVIDIA GPUs, but can we? So can you put the link to that in the chat, and I can check it out? Sure. Thank you so much. You've saved me a lot of time. Thank you.
No problem. Let me just get a link for that.
While you do that, Jorge has a question as well.
Yes, I have a question. Alistair, thank you so much for your presentation. Actually, was really interesting. I was curious about interoperability, because I know this is a kind of like a topic in the moment now. because there is a lot of software around, but the communication within the software is not like a fully connected or fully integrated to create a really good ecosystem for managed information. How that works in the ecosystem that you're proposing? You have like a specific software that works with a specific system that you can collaborate together, or how that works?
Are you talking about, sorry, are you talking about the data management on there?
Yes, the interoperability between the different applications.
Yeah, so I think some of them will use their existing ways of exporting. So it might be, like I say, IFC to COPE. It's a seamless way to get it in there. Some of them you may need a connector, and like I say, Speckle is really great for that. So it goes, you've got SketchUp, and you want to get it into Navisworks or ArchiCAD, and so Speckle I talk about a lot because I think it's a really amazing tool what they've developed. I'll put a link in the chat again with that. But that that would be the the other way of doing it. And then if neither of those are applicable, that's when you'll probably need to engage a specialist to create an integration for you. So there are consultancies like Remap who would do that for you. So they could build a Revit plugin using the API, which would take the information from your source information, whatever that is, into Revit, and that will help you to help to do that. So there's a sort of kind of an order of cost across all of these, which is like, first step is what's out there. Second step is what are the proprietary solutions which you can use, which are quick, easy, cost effective because someone's done all that work. And then once you're moving above that, you're going into visual scripting, using Python, using Dynamo, Grasshopper. And then from there, you're going into integrations, and then you talk to someone about creating integrations between software. And then from there, you're going, actually, there's nothing out there. I need to develop my own piece of software. And then you're right at that top end, which is essentially the most expensive and time consuming. But there's that sort of ladder that you go up before you get to that point.
Okay. Thank you, Allister.
Okay, no problem.
But would it be fair as a follow-up question to say that a lot of them have an API first JSON editing background? The software.
Maybe I don't know, honestly. I mean, we did use JSON for SiteSolve to Revit. We used a JSON file to export that information and use the Revit API for it. I don't know if that's the same for all companies. Like I say, at COPE, they made the decision to say we are IFC. They built their own kind of IFC library, or I think they used another one, but they built their own one eventually, I think. So that's where they made a decision about it. But obviously, other companies will make their own decisions. And if you read AEC magazine, I can't remember, but Martin from AEC magazine made the point that if you create something using the Autodesk Forge or the Revit API or whatever, and your software relies on that, if Autodesk basically say to you, we don't want you to do that anymore, they could revoke that, and then you've got a product which doesn't work because the basis for your development is completely gone. So he was kind of sounding a kind of a caution alarm, which is, if you're going to develop a tool and it's going to be based on Autodesk Forge, then know that you're getting into their ecosystem and you are beholden to them for that. Whereas actually, if you use something like IFC or JSON or open data, is it open source specification? Yeah, OSS. Then you're going to be in a position where that doesn't matter, and actually it makes you a lot more investable. Yeah, that's yeah. People can invest in you a lot easier because they're like, okay, it doesn't have to just be Autodesk that wants to buy you. It could be any company because IFC will work with any sort of software. Yeah, blend of BIM. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all open source, and yeah, that's a really good example of piece of software which work across lots of different solutions.
Well, if there are no further questions from any. Here's one. Okay, moving. The question.
Hey, Allister, good to see you again.
Yeah, hi.
Among those tools that you've actually, yeah, oh, nice. I've got my answer. All right.
Sorry.
Tools. Have you ever found, specific endeavors about making the tools customizable for the clients? Since I believe we need more databases, more automation in HC, making a tool to be customized for every, need a company has, would be a, kind of benefit. So, have you ever found some endeavors like that?
So, I'm not sure I understand. So, in terms of like the library of parts that it's kind of based upon.
Oh, I mean, for example, a client for us needs a tool to be delivered in terms of the bespoke need in a specific project, but
Yeah.
no software actually are there, and we need to customize the ticket for them. And this is what I actually am trying to do at the moment. And I'm wondering if there is another parallel situation among those applications that you've collected.
The one I'm thinking about is that Open company. Have you seen them? They're allowing people to use kind of. Hang on, that Open company. Let me just. I can't find the link to it. Hang on, there we go. So they're basically doing that, I think, a bit more. Let me just share my screen. But in answer to your question, I'd have to have a look and research a bit more. But I think that Open company is probably the best example I could think of at the moment, where they are. Let me just see. It's an open ecosystem where you can build your own AECO software, help free the industry and make money out of it. So you can build your own software there. And I met the founder recently. He's really great. He's really interesting. I recommend following him on LinkedIn. I'll try and find his details and share them. But yeah, that's one example potentially of that. But I'm sure others will emerge over time as well, if there's the right sort of audience for it.
The way that I understood that question was, given that you're the conduit with the marketplace, you're sort of acting as the conduit between the developers of these software solutions and the clients, and you've got a framework with which the users can start to rate their software, whether there's capacity for you as that conduit to be guiding customizable edits to those offerings from the software companies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so what kind of say to them that people are looking for this, can you build this for them and put it on their roadmap? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that would be that's perfectly possible. And like I say, I've talked to a lot of ConTech companies, and they are looking at what they need to try and achieve and how to do it and get client feedback. So what could happen is on the marketplace, people can test and review the software. That review essentially could go back to the company that creates that software to help inform them and say, oh, users are giving us this score, or we're not scoring very well here. And that could inform their roadmap a lot more, so that they have a forum to actually see what users want, rather than, because it's hard to get that feedback, isn't it? Apart from people moaning about software, it's hard to get actual software which is where users say, this is what we want to see.
For you as a kind of business opportunity, whether they're whether what you're offering them, if they get the reviews, then that's an extra fee that the company pays you to get access to those reviews. Like a subscription to them as well for what they do with your platform.
Yeah, I like the idea of this. This is sounding good. I think obviously there's loads of kind of data privacy and those sort of things which need to be upheld and need to be looked at. But yeah, essentially that is a way of moving forward, isn't it? It's actually say, yeah, we can provide you with this data, and they sign up for a like a not software as a service fee, but like a retainer, I suppose, to be able to get that information.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for the presentation, by the way. It was great. Really
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, good. I mean, it was a bit, obviously it's hard to yeah, put all my thoughts together. It felt a bit like a mishmash of a lot of different things, but it's essentially kind of describes where I've been over the last sort of 9 to 12 months, really.
No, fantastic. It was really enjoyable. It's good to share that with us. So if there are no further questions, then there's one. Move into the question chair.
It's indeed hot. And my question is that actually it's maybe a suggestion that I believe that architects or people working in the AEC sector must focus more on augmenting the current softwares. For instance, those from Autodesk, because at some point they will develop something better because they have more resources. So I think the competition will be less severe if we focus on actually providing them with plugins. We can have subscription for that or monetize them in other ways, but competing with big software companies, I think it's unfeasible. For instance, building something that can rival Revit and uses AI, whatever new technology you can name it, but I believe that's unfeasible. And at some point, Autodesk or Rhino, other companies can build better duplicates of what we can build.
Yeah,
I disagree with that.
That's good. Good stuff.
Actually, I want to add something to it. I was thinking in the background. Like, don't you think this is a process if you're adding a lot of constraints on the resources of the company? Because we know one of the big aspects of architecture company especially is the training, and how much it costs the company to train these staff. So even their selection of the staff usually is not just based on the architectural skills as much as it is on using Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever software that company is using. And when you suddenly say, well, on that workflow, we need to use another 3 or 4 softwares there, then you're putting a lot of overhead on the training of the staff, to be able to use that. So if the idea is that the new solution is coming off in existing software that they're using, then they are more likely to to learn that than to start with something that's completely new.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think.
I'll tell you example. Sorry, I remember even Revit, for example, when it came in Sydney, that was in 2005, 2006. Autodesk, what they did, they offered it for free on top of AutoCAD. So if you upgrade your AutoCAD, it was like 12 or 13, back then they give you a Revit license for free. And the idea was that because they know if they push that software, it's there, no one will buy it. But if they get it for free, after 5 years, they start charging for it. And so that's because understanding culture of the architectural practice and how trivial it is, when it comes to technology.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, yeah, they're all valid points, and it's one of the challenges we have. Is do you say, well, we stick with Revit and we just build plugins and we try and resolve the known issues we have with that, or do you say, we're going to have some other tools which do that a lot better? Because there are many tools which do things much better than Revit does, which are available out there. I think that saying that we just because we have Revit and we have Revit means we have to have Revit. I'm not sure I'm keen on that argument. I think I'd like us to be actually much more critical and go, actually, we have got Revit. Where is it good? What does it do well? What does it not do well? And then think about, look at plugins, can that solve it? Or look at those software solutions out there which just completely do it a lot better, because they are, they're solving that niche issue in a really neat way. I think that the reality is, Autodesk will buy competitors. They bought Spacemaker, and now that's Forma, and that's built into their system, and that's the way they work. But they can't buy everything, so there's going to be lots of other software out there which will compete and do things differently. You may be, obviously ArchiCAD and Nemetschek will purchase as well. But what we want to see is a really broad ecosystem of solutions which give users choice. I don't think we want to. I don't want users to be in a position where like I either get Revit or ArchiCAD, and that's all my only options. I think we want to get to a position where there are better solutions than that.
I totally with you, but if you look at a more positive example, there is Rhino and there is Grasshopper, which are going to influence Rhino, completely in the workplace. So it's not necessarily just like something else that could, just like with the Grasshopper, extended capabilities and open venues, for architecture. But the Grasshopper didn't if it was completely independent, I don't think maybe it wouldn't really be as famous as it is now.
Can I jump in and help Allister here? So it's not a question, but it's just a personal observation through practice. So software is here to stay. So whatever software that architects are using or anyone is using, that's here to stay. I think the challenge which is becoming more prevalent is, okay, do we have all the resources in place? So it doesn't matter what software you're using, the challenge is becoming getting people to get used to the idea of using technology to design like reducing manual tasks. And that's where all the computational designers are coming in. So we are reducing the time that people are taking to produce documentation and design. So we are not challenging the designers themselves. We're just introducing them to new tools. With Autodesk, the problem is, from what, in my opinion, they're not listening to the users, and the price that the software is coming in at, it's not feasible anymore for or cost effective. It's like, for example, you've got 70 people working in a firm, you've got BIM Collaborate licenses for them.
On hold. Yes, maybe I can weigh in the meantime.
Sorry, yeah, just go on. Sorry, my internet just tried to stop me from talking. But it's
Again.
You're not known.
It's just. So I think it's just a technology sort of thing, and we are not trying to stop people from designing buildings, of course. It's just a new tool set. So that's about it.
Of course, but for instance, we have PyTorch now and TensorFlow from two giants, Meta and Google. So if we are to design something, a new machine learning library, it would be very hard to convince people to move to it. Actually, it was hard for PyTorch, as in it has the backup of Meta, but as an open source tool. If we develop software for instance, Blender, I would argue that's a good point because it's open source and a lot of people can contribute to that compared to, for instance, that open company, if I'm not mistaken, which has some staff. So it would be hard for a 5-member team to compete against Autodesk. But Blender or Blender BIM, they can because they are open source. So I believe we can have our own software that can talk with different softwares, and Revit is one of them, and Blender can be one of them. For instance, if we can have a duplicate of Grasshopper that worked within Revit, Blender, Rhino, even SketchUp, maybe, it would be a very good software to develop because it can talk with it.
So Kian, I was talking about the software. It's fine. So our job as BIM managers or IT managers, or like in my opinion, is to make it easy for the designers to use whatever tool they see fit to do their job. So if a designer comes in and he says, oh, I want to use this new tool, and then like what Allister was doing, he created that virtual machine to deploy and test it for them. So like, I think what's happening is, in my experience, is if we try and restrict people from using the tools that are available, that's the problem. And then so that's causing the divide. Like some senior people they are still old school. That is fine. That's totally fine. And if there's the new generation that's coming up using all these new tools and developments and technology that's coming up, then the companies have to make it possible for them to use those things easily. Because in the end, if one person, one computational designer, if he can produce the work of 30 people, it's more than cost effective. If he's automating generation of drawings and uploading them to Aconex or whatever, trust me, if then it becomes the only thing the company or the business will care about is how much money am I saving and how much automation. They don't care about, they only care about the design. They only care about sustainability or things like that. And whatever tools their teams are using, then it is our job to make it easy for them. I think, in my opinion. Okay, I'll let it be. I've talked too much already. Sorry.
Andy, you go.
Okay, so I do agree with a lot of the comments that have been said. I think the biggest thing facing the industry when it comes to technology is change management. You know, we've got, and that's due to the nature of the business. We've got people who are leading projects who've been using a certain technology for 20 plus years. They're not going to be likely to want to change because there's a loss of control and things like that. There's also the fragmented nature of the business. We never stop a production line, retool, and then start the next production line. We have projects overlapping and things like that. So there's never an ideal time to introduce a new technology or a new tool. So that's something to think about. I think a lot of the discussion just now has been around almost perpetuating the existing trend that we've had around data silos. You know, one of the reasons that Autodesk have been so prevalent and so successful is because they got out in front of clients, they got out in front of developers and persuaded them of the necessity of their tools. And so everybody had to deliver Revit, everybody had to deliver in a certain file format and things like that. So that introduced this problem that we've seen. We've got a risk right now, and I think it's why I didn't agree with the comment around Autodesk. We're moving from file silos to, or file format silos to cloud silos. You know, Autodesk are moving all of our data into the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and so suddenly we're going to have to start introducing in there. I think there is a conversation that we can have, and it's what we introduced into the future AEC specification, is this idea of becoming much more software agnostic when it comes to our data. Is there a common language that we can be introducing? Now, there's promise there around IFC, there's promise there, well, there's analogies around USD, even though it's not the right thing for the AEC industry. But that, for me, I think is where there's the biggest opportunity. If our softwares can be talking the same language to an extent, each doing their own function that they are best at, but essentially contributing back to a project database, that then actually enables a much more richer movement of data and much more agility between different softwares, which is where Allister's marketplace then becomes hugely beneficial, because then you can just be using the right tool for the right job. You're not stuck thinking, I need to use Autodesk to do absolutely everything because that's where all my data lives at this moment. So I think there's a lot of different things to consider, but I think Allister's marketplace is a brilliant kind of step in that direction.
But it brings me with the tech stack that you outlined before, Allister, and the jobs that architects do, to the question, what do architects do all day? So if you really think about, you know, you have a certain kind of tech stack that you want to just existing workflow, a process or a task that you have to do, and you say, I'm going to do that at the moment with software provider A, that it might not really be good, but I can't really prove how good or how bad it is. And I want to change to another software provider B and C and D through the tech stack. The first thing I think you really need to understand is what is happening when you do certain tasks or certain kind of processes. Can you track them down to understand them really in a fine grain, what is happening, how long it takes, what kind of steps you do between different softwares or within one software. And if you understand that and you could measure what time it takes to do certain things and then have a comparison to say, well, I need 6 hours versus 3 minutes for this ones, and the investment for the current workflow is A, and the investment for the next workflow is B and C, then you'll probably be in a position to really make an informed decision. So at the moment, you can propose those tech stacks, but you can't really prove that these are actually the right tech stacks and they just work on a fine-grained level versus an overarching level, as you showed.
I'm really sorry, but I'm going to need to disappear because I've got another meeting, I'm afraid. It's really fascinating as well. I'm so sorry.
That is absolutely fine. Then we let you go now. We don't have any evening here.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the day. I'm sorry, but I mean, yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and yeah, the discussion's been amazing. Reach out to me if you've got any questions afterwards, and I'll try and.
I think we're going to reach out to you for after we've seen what you've done for a discussion forum at some stage to discuss really, what you've seen, what kind of softwares you have, what are problems in the AEC industry, and with your focus groups, we would more than happy and interested in help you with your focus groups as well.
Amazing. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will see you all again soon, and yeah, appreciate your time.
Okay. Good night. Good fight. See you all soon. Thank you. Bye bye.